What does an architect make is a fantastic question. And in this video, I'm going to go through how to find out what an architect makes, whether you are looking to study architecture, if you're a student about to start your career, or if you are looking to advocate for yourself, to ask for a promotion, to go for a new role, or looking to move on to a new company. And so I'm going to go over what the AIA Compensation Report is about, free and paid resources that the AIA has that you can access. And then I'm going to dive into the Pittsburgh Equity and Architecture Report that I did for the people in the Pittsburgh area. And all the links I'm going to talk about are below. So thank you for joining us.
Hello,
I'm Caitlin Rosier, a licensed architect and founder of mentorDINO. mentorDINO is your go-to resource for professional growth and development. I launched this YouTube channel to share experiences, stories, and resources with you. I'd love to hear from you and what questions you have about the architecture, design, engineering, and construction industry. Leave a comment below. And take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share with your colleagues. It really helps to let others be able to find this resource. So let's build a brighter future together. Welcome to mentorDINO, and let's dive in. So what does an architect make? The best resource to go to is the AIA Compensation Reports and Calculator. And that can be found at the AIA's website, and that's American Institute of Architects. I'll leave links below to everything I talk about today, just so it makes it really easy for you to find in the future. So what is the AIA Compensation Report? It is a survey sent out to AIA members to see what they're making, but also seeing how their firm is doing, growth. This survey is a really intense survey, which may also lead to why there's some gaps in the reports that come out because it's so long and we're so busy. Oftentimes it takes me 4 or 5 times to actually get through it because it's so long, and not everyone goes back and finishes those reports. Oftentimes they just stop, forget about it, and then the deadline passes. So anyway, jumping into the report themselves, it does go through salaries, hiring, benefit trends. This is very helpful for a firm, and if you're looking to set salaries for a new hire, it's a great place to go. You can download the reports by going and clicking on the compensation report, but it's pretty expensive, and especially if you are a student or a recent graduate and money is tight, it can be hard to fork out $425. Now, there are some benefits of you could go down and jump and just get your region. And when you look at the regions, they do describe what is in everybody's region and cities. So I'm located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I am in the Mid-Atlantic region. So that includes New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. So I could download that report, go to Mid-Atlantic, but it's still $255. Now, I am an AIA member, so there is a price for AIA members that's 40% off, which is very helpful, but that's still a lot of money, especially when I'm going to be getting information on New York and New Jersey and Philadelphia that I don't care what's going on over there. I just want to know about my region itself. Now, if this is very expensive for you, if you are looking to go for a new job or looking for your first job, you can always go through and check out your local AIA office. I know I'm able to go to the Pittsburgh office and talk to the staff there and able to see the report and be able to jot down just the numbers I need to take with me and move forward, so I don't need to spend the money to get the full report. Now, the full report would have a lot of other benefits to know the other benefits besides salary and what's going on if you need to know that information for either setting up a job or looking for a job and expectations. There is a free report summary. It's more just high-level trends and what's going on in the industry. It doesn't really give you much information in terms of salary, but it does go through what changes are happening at different firm sizes and different information that is always good to check out. Let me head back over here. And then if you want, if you are a recent grad, they do have this new graphical download for a new grad salary versus cost of living. Now, this is a very interesting data set. It goes through the major cities. So again, if you're looking for these major cities and that's where you want to live, this is super helpful for you. If you're jumping into Chicago, you can see the median salary is $57K for a recent graduate out of school. But if you're in a city outside of that, it's really not that helpful. it does have a national breakdown of numbers, but that can be pretty high, and especially if you're in a small town or small city, they're going to go with that's all inflated because of these major metropolitan regions. Like San Francisco is up to 72K as a median salary rather than the 61. But then if you look at Columbus, which is probably one of the smaller cities on here, it's at 52K as a median salary, which is a good bit less than the national average. So you really can't lean on this if you're going outside these cities, but if you are going to one of these cities, this is really helpful information for you. That is all free on their website, and again, link will be down below. So if we jump back into the benefits section of the website, they do also have compensation calculators that you can check out, and I'm going to just make my head smaller. You can check out the full reports, summaries, and different regions, and again, if you're an AIA member, you get 40% off. But being an AIA member is not cheap. I know for Pittsburgh, it's almost $1,000 to be an AIA member a year. So not really saving you too much money being an AIA member for the 40% off. It's going to be a pretty significant jump for you, especially if money's tight. So I'm going to jump over to the AIA calculator. So they have this free salary calculator that you can jump in, again, to get an idea for your region. And over here, they do give you some definitions, what's going on, how do they break out the different percentiles, what does their average mean, and definitely what it measures. So this does include any additional cash compensation to these averages, so bonuses and things like that. It does go through in here different breakdowns of additional cities per region, but you should know what city you're in based on the state that's listed above. And again, I'm in the Mid-Atlantic since I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I'll be using that as the example. The About section tells you where all the survey data comes from, more about the research, and how to learn more. So if you're a research junkie, love the data, it is a really cool report to see through in depth and see where they gather the information. But jumping to the calculator, so this can be helpful if you're just looking to study architecture, if you're a student, or if you're somebody in the profession right now and seeing what's going on. This can give you a general idea on what's happening. Now they have all these different levels you can choose from, so I'm going to jump down to a recent college graduate since we just went through the diagram of what's going on in other cities. They do identify if it's specifically non-licensed positions, and that means you are not a licensed architect for that process. There is a decent salary jump to go from unlicensed to licensed. That'll go over here in a minute. But jumping to recent grad, it breaks down the numbers with the different percentiles. I'm not going to go over that. You can always check out the About section or read a little bit more of the details below. But this is all the national averages. Again, be hesitant to use just the national, but it does give you a breakdown of numbers and data, which is nice. But for using it for any argument's sake or expectations, I would shy away from it, especially with these bigger cities inflating some of the numbers because of their cost of living. So if I jump to the Mid-Atlantic, you can tell the numbers have dropped. So going from all down to the Mid-Atlantic, based on my selection, it does keep the all respondents down below, so you can see the number of people that answered in those regions versus the total. And it shows that actually I'm probably a little bit higher than the all respondents, which is good information to know. Now, again, this is the Mid-Atlantic region, and for me, that's New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. And so this includes New York City and Philadelphia in these numbers. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The cost for living in Pittsburgh is not the same as New York City. So a lot of the times you'll get pushback from firms if you are in smaller towns or rural regions that you cannot use these numbers because the cost of living is all inflated because of the larger cities that are included in this data set. Now, the reports themselves, when you do get them for the breakout regions, you do get the individual cities with it. So in there, I can see the breakdown of what the Pittsburgh region is and just look at those numbers. Now, another helpful resource, especially if you are in a city that has a local AIA office, you can always call the office to be able to stop in and see the report for yourself. So that's what I've done in the past. They're very welcoming. I can jump in, see what my numbers are, jot them down in my notebook, and be on my way to have some information to take with me if I'm going and asking for additional money, a promotion, a new job, any type of information. I want to jump and take this into what I created to help my city know what was going on without having to jump in and buy the full compensation report, because I know as a young architect, you can be really tight on money and funds, and you may just not have the funds to be able to be an AIA member, have access to different things, and pay for the reports themselves. So in early 2023, I launched my Pittsburgh Equity and Architecture report, which this is actually version 2. I did my initial report back in 2019. Again, I was a super young professional, was not getting paid very well, and just trying to understand what was going on with the calculator being a little bit more vague for my specific region. So in 2019, I did a report and had so much success with it. Everybody really loved it. It is an open resource and still available on my website, which I have links below that you can always go and download that report and see what that looked like. So I did a new one in 2023, which was very interesting to then go back and look at 2019 versus 2023, how much COVID has changed our industry, what's happened in the world. Hybrid work is really influxed and been more of a norm. And then I also added interior designers to this. I had a lot of people reach out to me in 2019 that they wish there was a designer section so they could understand what was going on, because the compensation report really doesn't highlight designers until they're at a senior level, because they're typically not AIA members. So I'm going to go through and give you a high level of what's in this report and why I find it's important. If you have any questions, you can leave them below, but I also have a link and it's free access. You can just drop your email and I will send you a PDF version of this that you can use if you're in the Pittsburgh region or in a region that may be similar in terms of cost of living. So diving in, I do give an introduction of the survey itself, the numbers, where it came from. I had 210 participants this year, and this was all done in early 2023, so launched it in January and closed it out in February. So just keeping it open for about a month before people forget about it. I had 165 architects participate and 45 interior designers. The questions I ask are very much cut and dry, simple selection. The only fill in the blank is for the salary number itself. Everything else is a selection process. So from there, you get to pick and choose. If you leave things too open-ended, I find people just don't finish taking the survey. So mine's pretty much cut and dry, but you can always download the report to see what questions I ask in particular. And so a little bit demographics behind the survey. I was very pleased that 50-50 male-female for the architects. I was not surprised on the amount of females for designers, but was pleasantly surprised that 7% male designers did participate. I didn't go through a pay differential between those because it's such a small number of male designers that it wasn't enough of a data set to be able to break it down. Now, no data set's perfect. Even my data set is still very small, especially if you talk to any formal researchers out there. So there is information that I may be missing some data if I didn't have any participants for that particular level. Minorities, I hit 11% minorities, which was awesome. I was super thrilled to get that number. I hope to get more the next time I do my equity report. Unfortunately, because of the low numbers, I couldn't do a breakdown if there is a cost differential from a minority perspective, because such a small data set, it would have highlighted people too much, especially if others knew that they did take the survey. So for confidentiality reasons, I did not do any particular breakdowns between ethnicity. If you do have any questions on your ethnic background versus this report, I can always pull up the data set and let you know if there are any differentials. But again, trying to keep everything private for anybody who participated. Then a little bit more about the survey in terms of the numbers and age ranges. So this broke down between people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50 plus in terms of who participated. So you can see we had a good amount of breakdown. Not surprising, a lot of people in their 30s, besides the fact that I'm in that bracket and have a lot of friends in the AEC industry, also at a similar age, but that's also the time that you're doing a lot of moves in your career and trying to define yourself. So those are also the people that are most curious on the numbers to understand what's going on. And then I break everything down by years of experience. Now, granted, everybody's salary range doesn't automatically get bumped every year of experience that you've gained. You do have to take into other factors in terms of salary and compensation based on your skill set. Some people are higher, lower, and are different areas or have different specialties themselves. So you can always dive into the numbers, but just more showing the colors to show how diverse the participation was. I did ask about number of offices and staff locally, and this was more to see if there were any differences in pay between large and small firms, and there really wasn't. I didn't have too much of a data set to pull out for these middle level firms, but it is important to note just kind of what size firms are locally in the region. Your one office to 2 to 3 is fairly small, and then the large firms start to take over. Actually, this is the 1 to 3, and then the large firms over here. So a good amount of the data set for Pittsburgh are working in smaller offices or just one office. Then I also ask questions beyond the salary. I always find there is more behind your career and your compensation behind the number itself. So I dive into that as well as some of my questions, such as top benefits. So if you're a firm looking to reevaluate your benefits, this is a great way to see what people are looking for. And I did keep an other section. And a lot of people do put culture as one of the other benefits. So firm culture is very important for architects in terms of what they're doing, how they're appreciated. I loved the free beer comment, and I've always enjoyed having drinks in the office and getting mentorship from others over coffee or drinks. But anyway, since COVID, you can probably see more of this flexible work has really jumped up to one of the top instances. And I do go over how many days in the office people are going in, but really this is about just having the flexibility. If something happens, if you need to go pick up your kids, if somebody's sick, if you need to handle something at home, a contractor comes in for any work, that you're not judged by working from home. We've all proved with COVID we can work from home and still be successful. And now we do still find offices are valuable. Going in, being able to sit next to somebody, hear other conversations, sketch next to somebody to iterate designs is still important. But that flexibility option, just to be able to flex your needs as you need, or if there is a day of the week that's just easier for you to be at home based on your other obligations outside of firm life, that you're able to do that. Now, I will say parental leave is down towards the middle. I was a little bit surprised by this, but I did dig into the numbers a little bit more, and really parental leave, a lot of more of the young professionals and people about to start a family or starting a family are the ones that are really trying to push the parental leave, but the senior professionals aren't really pushing it because they don't benefit from it anymore. They didn't have that option when they were going through, and it's not to hurt the next generation. It's just if they had to pick the top benefits, they're going to pick benefits that benefit them, which professional development associations and exams, that bucket fits everybody at every skill level, which is why that one outwon the parental leave. Now, if you are looking to put in a parental leave option within your office, I'd really argue to add a grandparent leave. That may be an option to equal out parental leave to include everybody across generations, because you never know if somebody's kids are not local, so they don't get to see the grandkids as often, or if their kids need help because they don't get parental leave. Giving them opportunities to expand that leave to be able to help the family grow, because it does take a village in starting and growing a family. Maybe something to consider if you're considering adding a parental leave to get the benefit to go across generations. Now, jumping back out, I do go through licensure, how long it takes somebody to get licensed. Now, this was prior to the rolling clock being eliminated as a need for NCARB. I do know there are some states that still require it, so I will be curious if this pushes out without having that rolling clock pressure, but I do have the numbers in here, and again, this was all before the rolling clock closed out. And I do go through the NCIDQ because I do find it important for designers, and they can actually start to stamp drawings in some states with this certification. So it is important, but I was really saddened to see that really most people don't get any financial incentive or job level incentives for getting their NCIDQ. And so 51% of my participants of designers don't receive any benefit for getting their NCIDQ, which is very sad to hear because other firms are, so we should always advocate for that benefit. I do go through job titles just trying to see where the breakdowns were, seeing how diverse it was. In terms of the numbers, I don't break out licensed versus unlicensed in this section. It's just more years of experience. I do go through from a hybrid work environment, how often people are looking to be in the office, and for more than half of my participants, they're looking at 3 or more days in the office, with few people being mostly in. The 2 bars are between current hybrid work environment and their ideal environment. So you can start to understand if you're still trying to figure out the correct policy for your firm, where other people are, and maybe it's just about having flexibility in that environment. I do go through more about designers, how many designers are in their local office, their equal representation or unequal representation in leadership in a firm. So this chart was very eye-opening. As an architect and not a designer, it's not something I've really focused in on, but it was really interesting to hear that this was one of the questions I got from multiple designers to ask in my survey to see what was going on to help advocate for diversity in leadership, not only in race, gender, but also roles within the office. And then asking in terms of if they have overall design concept participation and a decision maker in that. And I was very happy to see that most people are, and hopefully we can get some of these lower numbers over towards the highly satisfied in my next report. I do go over types of roles for designers and what they do. So if there is a role you're not touching, definitely try to reach out to a designer in maybe another firm to learn about what they're doing and advocate to help with those solutions. Now, the meat and what everybody actually downloads this report for is the salary discussion point. Now, I don't want to disregard the other pages up above because I'm already on page 19. And so most of the report is all this other information that is important beyond salary. I've taken a job that was a significant pay bump and absolutely hated it. And so salary is not everything, but you do need to have salary discussions to be able to live the life you want and be able to afford the cost of living in your area and advocate for yourself. But I'm also an advocate that this isn't the only important item, and you should also look at the other benefits your firm provides and the culture and work you're looking to do. So jumping into salary perception first, I always advocate if we discussed salaries more, we'd have a better perception on how much we're making versus just trying to guess and getting upset with each other. So this bar graph below shows the salary perception between my 2019 and 2023 report. And you can tell everybody the median has moved up to the light green color, which is very awesome to see. But you can also note this other little stat that I was able to pull from my data set. Over 34% of my participants have changed jobs since April 2020. And that is right about when COVID started. It all started closing down in March, April, and the layoffs soon followed and everybody's work slowed down. So a lot of people did have to jump jobs, and there was a big boom in architecture after the COVID crisis has started to slow down and work started to pick up, and we got used to hybrid work and had to learn to live with COVID. And with that, the biggest salary jump you're going to get tends to be when you jump from a different role to a different firm. And 34% of people did that since my last report. So I'm really not surprised that perception has moved up. But if I asked about perception right at that April and May of 2020, I don't know how the perception salary would have been because a lot of people were laid off and were in an economic downturn at the time. So keep that in mind when looking at salaries. I did also go through typical work hours and how many hours a week people are working. I did find that really more the senior architects are the ones that are working the most hours in a firm. And so curious to keep track of actually your more senior staff to make sure they're not getting burned out. And maybe they need some training on how to delegate better, because if they aren't able to get through all their stuff, they may not be delegating fully or delegating at all and trying to do everything. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that most people are just within the 41 to 45 hours. I don't find that being too bad in a work week for going overtime, and the next biggest chunk being the solid 40 hours. Now, I didn't ask a good enough question in my survey this time. If you are a part-time or full-time employee, I'll have to add that for my next report. So that's where some of the lower numbers are that I'll have to check out for my next report to be able to break out some numbers a little bit differently. I do go through work weeks in more depth that you can download the report to take a look at. But getting into the numbers, I do give a graphical representation because I do like it more in graphs rather than the straight numbers, so you can understand a range. And I do try to use the AIA quartiles, but I do show the high and low whiskers and the outliers as well as dots. Now you can see I do have a row that does not have information. Again, it is not a large data set of numbers, so there are some areas that I don't have the data for to be able to help with. So hopefully if you are designer staff too, you can kind of take a look at between the rows above and below you and where you should be to see if you're adequately placed. I do go through salary ranges and try to give different data sets on where people are, show some outliers. You can tell there's a lot more outliers at the principal level, and that's because some people work on their own versus working in a large firm. If you're having a good year or a bad year when you're working in such a small firm, can really be a big swing at the principal level because you're at ownership. The lighter color versus darker color is licensed versus not licensed. So I break out all that information below and put years of experience. So you can see there's generally a bigger jump in the pay range once you get licensed. Now in the designer section, you can see it pretty much flatlines towards the beginning part of your career if you get your NCID code pretty quickly, but the gap gets a lot bigger once you become more senior staff and a little bit more open-ended. But again, only 45 people participated, so this is a very small data set to look at for it. And then over the years, so I did compare the numbers from my Pittsburgh Equity reports to see the growth and where it goes. Again, I did have areas in my data set that were blank from the previous year and learn from that survey as well to be able to do some cross-data analysis that I can do my next go-around. One of my goals for this report was to analyze it back to that AIA calculator that I started our video with, trying to see if I could give some advice for other people in the Pittsburgh region when looking at the calculator if they didn't want to look at my report. And I really couldn't come up with a good common thread. There are certain common threads, but it depends on what level you're at. So the green is within the range of between the whiskers. The yellow is equal to or below the upper whisker, and then the red is outside the upper whisker and is more of an outlier. So the green ones I would be perfectly fine telling generally till your 10 years of experience that you could probably advocate for that middle of the road range and not have any problem with it, because even in the all section there are people still making it in the outliers for the other areas. So all of those, you can use the AIA calculator just as it is, and you can leverage this report and show them this data set to prove the firm that you are in that median range, no matter if you're in identifying with the Mid-Atlantic or not. So leverage this piece of information to advocate for yourself. Once you start moving beyond this ARC 3 level, so over 10 years of experience, but before you get to principal, it's a little bit more of a muddy data set. People more generally are in the lower range, but there are people in the middle, and especially with the yellow regions, you're still within that whisker, so you can still advocate for yourself, but you're not going to be within that main box median range. And then the principal level can really be all over the place. Really depends on if you're having a good year, bad year, how small or large your firm is, if it's more of a straight salary, or if you're owning a small firm and you may take a pay cut to be able to pay your employees. So that one is a little bit more of a range. Just make sure you're paying yourself and setting your fees properly. So you can dive in and check out the report for yourself to see all the different data sets and charts. I do go over analysis of licensed versus not licensed, so generally you're in ARC 1 by the time you start that process. But for the most part, for getting your license, you are about at a 10K difference, if not more. So I would advocate that you should get a 10K pay bump whenever you get your license, because that is what my data set is showing. And if a firm is lower than that, then you're holding yourself back in terms of your growth. And that is a general difference all the way through your career as an architect, is kind of that medium delta for the difference. So definitely use that. Nobody's really doing different roles, especially in this architecture 1 and 2 range. You're all doing pretty much the same thing, whether you're licensed or not. So why not get that extra boost of money to help at home? Even if you never plan on stamping drawings, you never plan on being a principal and owning your own firm, you don't want to hold yourself back if you can get some extra money to help your family. I do also do a breakout with the NCIDQ. You can tell the beginning level of the career is pretty much flatlined, but then there is a significant bump further on that you can take advantage of that and be able to use that. So anyway, I hope this report was helpful to you in terms of what I'm able to show from a basic standpoint from Pittsburgh, being able to analyze it back to the AIA calculator. The AIA calculator reports are still very useful information for you to check out, but know the pros and cons if you're just going to use the calculator and based on where you're personally located. And if you're located in Pittsburgh or an area similar, feel free to use my report as a guideline for 2023. And let me know if you have any questions below or anything you'd like to see or asked whenever I do my next report. So thanks guys for checking this out, and I hope you enjoyed this talk about what an architect makes.